to give some time for other attendees to join before we get started. Hi, if you're just joining, thank you and welcome. We're just waiting 1 or 2 more minutes to allow some other people some time to join. Okay. Hi, everyone. I think we'll wait until 12:04 before we get started, just to give some other folks some time to join. Thank you for joining. We'll be back in just a couple minutes. If you're just joining, we'll be starting in 1 minute. Okay, hi everyone. We will be starting now. Oh, thank you for joining. So today we'll be presenting on the used EV option and market and how it is doing. Our presentation is titled, Is a Used EV Right for You? So we'll explore lots of different areas about the used EV market. We are recording this webinar. There is an option for captions, I believe, but just to let you know that this event is being recorded. To get into this, we should start with some Zoom basics. So we will have time for Q&A at the end of the presentation, but before then, every participant will be muted. We'll answer questions at the end of the presentation and as time allows during. Please feel free to use the Q&A function. Anna and I are here. We will take a moment to introduce ourselves in a couple of minutes. But if you have a question, we will answer it at the end, or if it is very relevant to the current slide, we may even answer it during the presentation. But please feel free to submit questions in the Q&A function. We will follow up after this webinar with these slides. If there are any resources you are particularly interested in, please let us know in the Q&A function, and we can add that to our email, and we will send a recording. There is an option for closed captions. An option for closed captions should appear at the bottom of your screen. Again, this webinar is being recorded. Before we start, we are speaking today from Green Energy Consumers Alliance, which is a nonprofit based in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, with a mission to empower consumers and communities to speed a just transition to a zero carbon world. My name is Caroline, and I am an electric vehicle program associate on the Drive Green team, where we conduct electric vehicle programming. We have a webpage on the Green Energy Consumers website with a lot of resources, information about incentives. If you have any questions or would like to see any particular resources, please let us know, and we will make sure to share it at the end of the presentation in our follow-up. I'll give Anna a moment to introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I had to figure out my own unmute button. My name is Anna van der Spek. I am our electric vehicle program director. Ooh, sorry about that. And I will be in the chat. So please do write in any questions. I'm happy to answer them during Caroline's presentation or gather them, and then we'll have a little Q&A session at the end. So welcome, thank you very much, and let's get going.
Okay, great. So now we can take a moment to overview what we'll be talking about today. We'll start with the various benefits of considering buying pre-owned. We'll talk about battery health because that is an important topic to understand. And there are a couple of tips about battery health and testing that we will go over. We'll talk about various rebates for used EVs, both in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And we'll finish by sharing a couple of resources about popular used EVs at different price points. To start off, we'll start with the benefits of buying pre-owned. Firstly, the used car market is resilient despite different economic challenges over time. So over the past year, we have seen the federal tax credit go away. For used EVs, that was $3,500. It was no longer available after September 30th of 2025. Currently, there are record high average costs for the price of a new car, that considers internal combustion engine vehicles. And the cost for a new EV is high as well currently. Within the past year, we have seen varying tariffs on imported auto parts and vehicles. All that is to say, it has been a tough economic time. The graph on the right is borrowed from Recurrent Auto, which is a really great resource that we will borrow from several times in this presentation. But what you can see here is how the new and used car markets respond to economic challenges and shocks over time. So this takes into account different economic disturbances or challenges over time from 1990 to 2010. As you can see, the used car market is relatively more stable than that of the new car market. And all that to say, the used EV market is growing and has grown rapidly with the advancement of technology, battery technology, and many vehicles coming off of lease. So we'll go on to show you how the used EV market is growing and competitive despite the economic times that we have been in. So here we have a couple of graphs from Kelley Blue Book. Kelley Blue Book reports on the status of the car markets for both hybrids, plug-in hybrids, internal combustion engine vehicles, and electric vehicles. On the left, we can see used EV sales. This is from December of 2025. Used EV sales are in green. As you can tell, the green bar is lower than the blue bar, but used EV sales are up on a year-over-year and month-over-month basis. Days supply on the right refers to the number of vehicles available for sale or how long it would take for dealerships to sell out of those models. And so that number, 50 days, means that is the average amount of time, a maximum amount of time it might take for a car to be sold and move off the lot. For both used EVs and in both graphs, you can see that sales and day supply have increased over a year basis and a month-over-month basis. That is to say that sales are continuing to grow. In the last slide, we saw how the used car market broadly has been relatively stable in terms of sales performance and how many people are able to access the vehicles over time in response to troubling and disturbing or hard economic shocks. But the used EV market has grown a lot and has even done increasingly well during the economic time that we have experienced. And this is considerable even as the federal tax credit was eliminated and no longer available. Later in the slide, we will take a look at some of the different incentives that are available to help consumers save. Oops.
Could I
Yes.
interrupt? We have a couple of questions. Can you explain what the ICE?
Yeah. So the ICE acronym in this case refers to internal combustion engine vehicles or gas vehicles. All right. So a lot of used vehicles, a lot of used electric vehicles are entering the market, becoming available. So options, there are more options. Another resource from Recurrent Auto, which is both a consumer support and research entity. Uh, this is a recent article that they shared, and Recurrent Auto has a network of vehicles from both their members, and they'll take from other widely available resources like Edmunds or Cox Automotive. This particular study looked at more than 500,000 electric vehicles that were leased in 2023 and 2024. Typically, lease cycles last around 2 to 3 years. But essentially, what we're seeing in this graph is that on the left, that is the number of vehicles available. And on the right, on the x-axis, those are different chunks of time. So this is both where the off-lease vehicles entering the market stood in January of 2026 and how it is projected to look through January 2027. This does take into account how long used EVs or newer EVs have been leased for. So essentially, after that lease cycle ends, they generally become available on the used EV market. That goes to show that there are an abundance of used electric vehicles available. Recurrent Auto, in the same article, shared a list of some of the popular used EV models that they are seeing through their members. This includes the Tesla's Model Y, 3, the Hyundai Ioniq 5, the Volkswagen ID4, and the Ford Mustang Mach-E. Later on in the presentation, in the last section, I'll share a couple of more lists of used EVs that are both popular, do well, and are available at different price points. We use EVs as a market whole are doing very well and are competitive, and there are used EVs available at different price points. A similar Recurrent Auto study essentially compared upfront price costs and price changes from September to October 25 of this year. And this was particularly for electric vehicles. As you can see on the right, we see electric vehicles that have a price point of around 20,000 or more. That is before September to October 25. We see how those price points increase. So they essentially became more expensive. And then on the left, we see in red used EVs that were priced at less than $20,000 before September through October of 2025. So interestingly, those vehicles that were priced at less $20,000 or less saw price decreases. So they became cheaper. So this is important, and we wanted to highlight this because while we've experienced tough economic times and some vehicles have increased in price, or new vehicles as a whole, so including gas vehicles, have record high price points. Within the used EV market, there are different price points that meet different budget needs, and vehicles that were already on the more affordable side have actually become cheaper. Quickly, we should highlight maintenance costs because maintenance costs are lower for both new and used electric vehicles. On this graph, this takes from a Consumer Reports study, which compares the estimated per mile repair and maintenance costs for different types of vehicles. So battery electric vehicles, plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, and internal combustion vehicles or gas cars. Battery electric vehicles are shaded as the gray dotted line. You can essentially see over time, the lifetime average savings between a battery electric vehicle and a gas engine vehicle is around 4 cents per mile. And so some of those reduced maintenance costs come in the form of never again having an oil change when you drive a completely electric vehicle, or needing to replace your brake pads less frequently, just to name a couple of things. But this is on a very micro per mile basis. If you are interested in total lifetime savings, we have a couple of resources on that. So we can certainly share that as well. Well, if you're interested in how much you could save on fueling costs, whether you have made the switch and drive a battery electric vehicle or a plug-in hybrid, or whether you are curious about making the switch, there are a couple of tools that exist to help you calculate your estimated savings. One that we'd like to highlight is called the EV Savings Calculator. So you essentially, the link is included here. So we'll send out the slides and you will have access. And you can plug in a couple of different data points, meaning maybe how much you drive on average, the cost per gallon of gas, as well as your electricity costs. The cost per gallon of gas might not be something you know at the top of your mind, and the calculator actually has that listed depending on where you live. So if you're comfortable, you can plug in your location and it'll showcase how much you are expected to save on a micro and macro basis. So per mile, per year, and within 5-year chunks of time. To finish on the benefits of making the switch or buying a used electric vehicle, there are a couple of really important environmental and public health benefits that we should highlight. So battery electric vehicles don't have a tailpipe and therefore don't have tailpipe pollution. If you take into account where you're getting your electricity from, EVs as a whole dramatically reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So EVs are a public health tool helping to both reduce those greenhouse gas emissions and helping to clean the air that we breathe. There's a really cool tool that we input here, Union of Concerned Scientists. If you're interested in plugging it in, you can take a look at how much reduced greenhouse gas emissions you would be responsible for if you drove an electric vehicle. That's a really cool public health tool to try to estimate what some of your public health benefits could be if you make the switch. And lastly, I'd like to highlight that the more that we adopt electric vehicles, the lower the community exposure to harmful toxins like particulate matter and ground level ozone. Next, we'll move on to battery health, which is an important topic and thing to understand when thinking about making the switch. So battery health is essentially both the condition or the state of health and the performance capacity of your electric vehicle's battery over time. Battery degradation is generally a slow and gradual process. We'll look at average annual battery degradation rates, but essentially a degrading battery will result in a lower range and both a lower battery capacity. Several factors contribute to battery degradation. First being the vehicle's age. How old is your vehicle? Is it an earlier vehicle or a vehicle that is 5 years old? Your driving patterns. So usage considers both driving patterns and whether you charge at level 2 or how often you DC fast charge, as well as your battery chemistry is another important component. Batteries always have different advances. So some of the electric vehicles that are on the road, their batteries have different mineral makeup and extreme temperatures. So like with any device. If it is extremely hot out one day, you might suffer a little bit of range loss. Or if it is very cold one day, there are a couple of steps like preconditioning your vehicle that you can take. But like with any vehicle, whether it is gas or an electric vehicle, extreme temperatures do have an effect on how far you can go. There are things that you can do to slow battery degradation. So, like all devices with a battery degradation is a normal and gradual process. But electric vehicles, battery electric vehicles, are equipped with smart systems to protect and enhance that battery life for a long time. These include battery and thermal management systems. So in extreme temperatures or there is a very hot voltage, if you're charging with a fast charging, the battery and thermal management systems work together in helping to protect your battery from high battery degradation rates. As a rule of thumb, we always like to recommend maintaining that charge between 20 to 80%. So essentially, if you need to charge, you're on the go, and you are going to use a DC fast charger, we recommend going to charge your EV when that battery hits 20% and charging up to 80%. If you charge more than 80%, that is okay, but actually charging speeds slow down once you hit that 80% threshold. Oh, the graph on the right is from Current Auto again. This is an illustration of what battery degradation looks like over time. So a little bit of a decline is natural with all devices and with battery electric vehicles at the start or at the sort of beginning of the vehicle's lifetime. Then that stabilizes. And after that initial drop, that battery degradation rate is very stable and very slow. There are different mechanisms that protect consumers from any risks with battery degradation or issues. So EVs receive warranties like gas cars do, but a battery warranty actually covers the very rare possibility that your battery might fail you or your battery might need replacement. That warranty actually is bigger than the national requirement, but it essentially covers the first 8 years that you drive your EV or the first 100,000 miles. And so actually, if you were to purchase a used EV that is, say, 3 years old, that warranty is connected to the vehicle, not the driver. So that warranty would continue and you would access it. We always recommend, if you can, inquiring at the dealership to test for battery health. Dealerships are equipped to do this, and you can go home with a battery health report so that you know the used electric vehicle that you were looking at has a healthy battery. Battery failures are incredibly rare, and we will take a look at that, a couple more data points about that in a couple of slides. There are a couple of ways to check for battery state of health. You might not be able to get to the dealership to ask them to perform battery health scan and provide you with a report. There are tools out there, such as Recurrence tool that is linked here, that basically allows you to input some of personal data meaning the vehicle you are interested in and how long you've been driving the vehicle. And then the tool will estimate what that battery health looks like at that point in time and in the future. So that is a great avenue if you are not able to go out to the dealership to ask them to perform a battery health test. But battery health testing at the dealership can be easy, and we recently visited a couple of dealerships in Massachusetts to ask about this. So we found a couple of very interesting things. So both dealerships that certainly serve only EVs and dealerships that sell both gas cars, plug-in hybrids, and battery electric vehicles are all equipped to test the battery health of an EV. The actual test itself is a really fast process. You basically, the dealership or the maintenance crew will plug in a small scanner tool into the EV's OB port, the bottom of the vehicle, and it connects to a software that allows their computer to view the results. We'll take a look at what a sample battery health report looks like in the next slide. And besides this, dealerships we found often might offer their own battery health insurance, which is outside of that typical warranty that is offered, that it passes on to the consumer. So we have inputted two pictures here from Eco Auto. This is the particular tool that Eco Auto and some other dealerships may use to plug into the vehicle and perform the battery health scan. So of course, when we visited, we wanted to see a sample report. And this was really awesome being able to see. We visited Eco Auto, which shared it with us. And what we have here is a battery health report for a 2023 Kia EV6 battery electric vehicle. In the green box, the text is quite small, but what that says is first we have the vehicle identification number, which is needed for the test. The test looks at the state of charge or the remaining battery capacity after however long the vehicle has been in service. It'll look at miles on the odometer and the manufacturing battery warranty, which passes to the consumer because it is attached to the vehicle and not the driver or owner of the vehicle. And on the right, you'll notice that the battery capacity remains at 96% after 2026, after 3 years on the road. You'll notice two small graphs talking about cell balance or cell imbalance. When I visited Eco Auto, very neat that I learned is that in the rare occasion that a battery needs replacement, sometimes this can be told when battery cells are imbalanced. But within the sample report, this shows that a 3-year model vehicle has a healthy battery capacity and thus has a healthy battery. These tests are easy to come by, and visited a variety of dealerships that were equipped and quite knowledgeable about how to perform this battery health test. Batteries as a whole truly last many years. They're very durable, and outside of this, battery technology continues to advance as newer model vehicles come out and dealerships work on different battery mineral mixes within batteries. So that is really cool to see that not only are they durable already, but that technology is an area that is growing incredibly rapidly. Another study from Recurrent, this time they looked at more than 30,000 EVs and found a couple of things. Between 2015 and 2024, average battery sizes increased by 167%. To break that down, the greater the battery size, generally the larger battery capacity. It considered some of the earlier battery electric vehicles on the road, like the 2011 Nissan Leaf, as well as more recent vehicles. So the earliest EVs on the road, for looking back at 2011 or a little bit before then, had the highest battery replacement rate of around 8.5% in this particular study. So essentially, the vehicles that are the oldest in terms of years had the highest replacement of batteries, but is still under 10%. A second group were model year vehicles from 2017 to 2021, had a battery replacement rate of 2%. And from model years 2022 and onward, that battery replacement rate was 0.3%, so less than 1%. This was a study of 30,000 electric vehicles again. That particular resource is linked here if you were interested in looking at some of their graphics. And within this big 30,000 plus number, lastly, Recurrent Auto found that under 4% of the vehicle's batteries had been replaced. So the need for battery replacement is pretty rare. again, you're often covered. If you purchase a used EV, that warranty of 100,000 miles or 8 years will pass on to you. One other resource from Recurrent before we look at another study about battery degradation rates is a really cool illustration of what the electric range looks like after several years on the road. So on the left, there are different manufacturers, and this takes into account the battery electric vehicles that they produce and sell. But as you can see, all of the range availability after 3 years is all over 90%. And again, it will vary depending on the vehicle, the model year, the conditions in which the driver drove the vehicle, the weather, as well as the battery chemistry. Well, here we have this really neat graphic from a resource called Geotab. In our last year's presentation on used cars, we had Geotab's 2024 data. So their 2025 data came out recently, and within their study, Geotab looked at around 22,700 electric vehicles. In total, that average annual degradation rate was 2.3%. Although the data is anonymized, so on the right, the different colored lines represent different battery electric vehicle models. You'll notice that the battery degradation process is a slow process. And while on the left we have state of charge that remains high, near 100% for all of these anonymized vehicles. So not only is battery degradation slow, state of charge or state of health in this case remains high. What is interesting and worth pointing out is that their 2023 data actually had a lower battery degradation rate of 1.8%. And this change is due to a couple of factors, mainly being the fact that people are fast charging their EVs more so than before. The DC fast charging network infrastructure has become a lot better, has really improved. And as well, newer deployed charging stations tend to have higher power capacities than before. So those few things, the hot temperature of DC fast charging will contribute to a slow battery degradation rate. There are many studies out there that do show and suggest that DC fast charging does not harm your battery, but this small difference is somewhat attributable, and mainly attributable to the fact that more people DC fast charge, and DC fast chargers are more easily accessible with the infrastructure having improved in the last few years. Moving on, we'll look at some of the rebates available in both Massachusetts and Rhode Island for people to save on a used electric vehicle. First up is More EV for Massachusetts residents. More EV Use is a $3,500 rebate for used battery electric vehicles and fuel cell electric vehicles. Generally, be income qualified. We'll look at those requirements in a moment. In terms of vehicle requirements, mainly we'll talk about battery electric vehicles just because fuel cell electric vehicles are not typically common in the New England region. But that price cap is $40,000. So that battery electric vehicle or fuel cell EV must be priced under $40,000. And it must be at least 2 years older than the day in which you are purchasing or leasing the vehicle. To be eligible, the vehicle must not have received the More EV rebate within the last 36 months or 3 years. In terms of consumer and program requirements, I mentioned that it is income qualifying. So you may demonstrate your participation in an income qualifying program, such as SNAP, LIHEAP, or Mass Health, or you may meet specific adjusted gross income limits. If you are an individual filer, that is $75,000. If you are a head of household, it's $112,500. And if you are married filing jointly, or if you are a widow, that is a $150,000 adjusted gross income limit to be eligible. If you are leasing, that lease term must be at least 36 months in length. And there is a pre-approval process to claim this rebate at the point of sale, where you go to the More AV webpage, which is linked here. You create an account. You can complete the pre-qualification check. You will be sent a voucher, which you can bring to the dealership so that you may receive the rebate at the point of sale. If you do not receive the pre-approval process, you can receive the rebate as a check in the mail. You have 90 days to apply for it online and receive it as a check in the mail. That was $3,500. More AV does offer a couple of other rebate adders, mainly More AV Plus and More AV Trade-In. If you are an income qualifying resident, you can receive an additional $1,500 through More AV Plus. Whereas More AV Trade-In is an additional $1,000 if you trade in a qualifying old gas car. Typically, those requirements are that the old gas car still has market value and is at least 12 years older than the calendar year in which you are purchasing. So if you qualify for both More AV Plus and More AV Trade-In, you can save a maximum of $6,000 off with the More AV rebate program. In Rhode Island has a rebate for Rhode Island residents. It's called Drive RI. And that value should say used. It's actually $2,500 for used battery electric vehicles and $1,750 for used plug-in hybrids. Drive RI actually recently increased their rebate amount. So this is correct, and that is a typo. That should say used. So if you are a consumer, you must be a resident of Rhode Island to be eligible. You must participate in an income qualifying program like LIHEAP or SNAP, for example, or you can submit a self-attestation form of income and upload a pay stub to, amongst maybe a couple of other documents to show that you qualify. The required documentation is linked here, as well as if you have any questions about what income qualifying programs qualify. So again, used battery electric vehicles, that is a $2,500 rebate. And it is a $1,750 or $1,750 rebate for used plug-in hybrids. This is a difference from More AV, which does not cover plug-in hybrids. As for the maximum price point, the used battery electric vehicle or plug-in hybrid must be priced under $55,000. And generally, you must purchase or lease that vehicle from a registered Rhode Island dealership. There are a list of pre-approved Massachusetts dealerships on the Drive RI website as well. So Drive Plus is an additional $1,500 rebate for income qualifying residents. So if you participate in a qualifying state or federal income qualified program, or again, you can submit that self-attestation form of income to show that you qualify, you can receive an additional $1,500. This is a difference from More AV, but instead of 90 days within purchase or lease, you have 120 days to apply for the rebate online. So lastly, we'll briefly look at some different popular and affordable EVs, used EVs that are at different price points. So first, a big resource we like to get our EV news from sometimes is Inside EVs. This is Inside EV's June list of popular used EVs of 2025 and 2026. So we have on the left the make and model, and then in the middle, that is the electric range, which often varies from either the standard or base trim model to a higher end trim. That price range will vary depending on where you're buying it from and the particular trim of that vehicle model. So these are a couple of great used electric vehicles that have been popular and are affordable at different price points. But very quickly, we will look at one other list. So news will often publish different resources on both the car market and the electric vehicle market, more specifically. And although this is dated from July 2025, this is their anticipated best used EVs of 2026 list. And on the left, again, we have that make and model as well as the year. And then in the middle, this is the electric range, which again might vary from the base model to a more higher end trim that costs a little more. And in this particular list, we looked at the fair purchase price in Kelley Blue Book, which essentially takes into account availability of that vehicle and economic times. So that is a fair price that you may expect the particular vehicle to be listed at a dealership. The list was long, so this what we see here includes maybe half of the USA Today list, but if you want to read the rest, that is linked here. Another resource, if you are interested in making the switch, is our UZ Finder, which we recently updated. That is linked here. If you've used our EV Finder for new electric vehicles before, it functions very similarly. If not, we encourage you to check it out. So here you can filter and sort by different features. You might be curious to look at used electric vehicles that have the highest range or that are priced from low to high, for example. You can look at DC fast charging capabilities, whether the vehicle has a built-in NACS port. We included the Kelley Blue Book fair purchase prices here, so you can take a look at the different vehicles offered and get an idea for what is a typical price point or price ask for that particular used electric vehicle. So that is linked here. Again, very briefly, we'll shout out, in fact, we are a nonprofit, and you're always welcome to donate if you appreciate our work. We love our Drive Green program and being able to host presentations like this, and the fact that we can highlight the used electric vehicle market. It's been very great to see how the used electric vehicle market has been both very competitive and how there's just an abundance of vehicles on the road right now available. There are a couple of events that we have coming up. So we will be tabling at the Quarry Lunar New Year Festival on February 22nd. So if you have any questions, if you're in the area, if you're in Quincy, if you want to come by, we'll be there. It was a great event last year. We'll have information and resources available. And then later this month, if you live in Massachusetts, we are sharing a presentation on how you can save money on an electric car, more EV rebate, and we'll look at a focus on what makes making the switch affordable. So those are particular events that are coming up. I think we can pivot to our Q&A. If you have any questions, please reach out to Anna. And I'll also put in our Drive Green email in the chat where you may reach out to us.
I'll just come off mute, excuse me, real quick to say I've answered a bunch of questions in the chat individually that were a little bit more specific to the questioner, but there is one question that I thought you could speak to, Caroline, because you actually visited a lot of these dealerships, and that is, what is the cost of the EV battery health test?
Oh, yeah. Really good question. So the EV battery health test is free. In the cases that I saw, if you are interested in a particular vehicle that they have in stock, I found that the dealerships I visited expected and were equipped to perform that battery health test as a routine process with potential consumers or customers. Yeah. I think I mentioned, at least in the case of Eco Auto, it might be offered by a couple of other dealerships, that dealerships might offer an additional sort of insurance for your battery. That I think that does have a cost, and that particular cost I'm not too sure of.
I'll jump in on one question here. We had a couple questions on a theme, which was asking for clarification on DC fast charging. And so if it sounds like we said two slightly contradicting things in this presentation, it's because the science is not entirely clear yet on the current impact of DC fast charging on long-term battery health. For a long time, what we heard was that using DC fast charging, which pulls in direct current, it's very high powered, up to 350 kilowatts at this point, that degrades the battery over the long term of owning a vehicle. And the reason for that is that DC charging introduces a lot of heat, and it's heat that degrades batteries' health over the long term. And so for a long time, from 2011 through to a couple of years ago, that is what the science said. What we found in the last year or so is that there's new studies coming out saying that that might not be the case anymore, because vehicle manufacturers have caught on to this and have really sophisticated battery health or battery management systems that make sure that the battery temperature doesn't go too high. And so now we're in a place where there's both research saying DC fast charging, even if you do it really frequently, doesn't degrade the battery health long term. And this research from Recurrent Auto that shows that, okay, maybe there is an impact of DC fast charging on battery health. The way that we kind of square that circle, for lack of a better word, is that it seems like newer vehicles are much less impacted than older vehicles. So in Recurrent Auto's data, they're looking at 30,000 vehicles of lots of different makes and models and model years. And it's likely that they have more vehicles in that study sample, basically, that are older and don't have that sophisticated battery management software. And liquid cooling of the batteries, for example. So if you are coming at this from the perspective of, I'm an EV owner or a prospective EV owner, should I be worried about DC fast charging? The answer is no, not really. Most people use DC fast charging every now and then. If you are DC fast charging every day, maybe that's a different story. Pay attention to the vehicle that you're purchasing and make sure it's got the liquid battery cooling and maybe has reviews for being particularly resilient to DC fast charging. But for most people who might use DC fast charging on a supplementary basis every now and then, you really don't need to worry about that. But Recurrent Auto and all the resources that we have on these slides will send you all those links so you can go and look up specific vehicles or dive into that research a little bit more. Let me see, a bunch more questions have come in. I can hear Caroline typing a response to something, so I'll just jump in to answer another question in live. So there's a question about how difficult is it to replace or repair the battery pack? How often is it done? This is definitely not something that you as an individual can do on your own. If your battery needed to be replaced, you would have to bring it into a dealership or a licensed entity that can replace it. As we went over in that one slide where we showed how frequently battery replacements are needed for EVs, you really should not have to replace your battery. Like that is the only times that happens is if there's a manufacturing defect, it gets caught relatively soon and is covered under warranty, but you should not have to worry about replacing a battery pack or repairing a battery pack. That is not a thing that happens frequently. And then there's a question about fast charging. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. Okay. We were asked which use EVs can use Tesla fast chargers, which EVs have the built-in Tesla chargers, and which can use Tesla fast chargers with only an adapter. The short answer is it depends. However, more vehicles that are more recent do have that NACS port built in. I would recommend taking a look at our EV finders, particularly maybe our new EV finder, just because it's a lot of the more recent vehicles from the last year or two that have that NACS port built in. You can filter your search by built-in NACS charger or NACS access. So you can either see if that vehicle requires that NACS adapter to use Tesla fast chargers or whether that vehicle has an NACS port that is built in. The Tesla like supercharging website does have a list of manufacturers that have signed deals and are compatible with the Tesla fast charging network. Some of those dealerships or some of those manufacturers, sorry, have already made those adapters available and have started putting in the ports on some of their newer vehicles. I think Inside EVs and Recurrent Auto really have resources on this as well. But the biggest and shortest recommendation would be probably checking our new EV Finder to get more of a feel of like which vehicles have that adapter or port built in as a native feature. Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions. Please, if you have a question, feel free to ask. We have a little bit more time before the hour. Okay. Okay, seeing as there are no more questions, please feel free to reach out to Anna or our Drive Green at greenenergyconsumers.org for any electric vehicle questions. I inputted our Drive Green at email in the chat. We will be reaching out later this week with a copy of this webinar recording and slide deck, as well as a couple of resources. So feel free to respond to that email with any questions as well.
I will actually jump in because we got a bunch of questions just under the wire here that I'll go through real quick, and then we'll call it a day, but you can always email us with further questions. So one person asked, is there any chance that the income limits for the Massachusetts rebate will be raised for individuals? I honestly don't know. To my knowledge, that has not been discussed. The state agency that administers the program is the Department of Energy Resources. You are always welcome to reach out to them directly. A lot of the rules for the state More EV rebate were set in legislation. So some of the rules you can't change unless the state legislature passes another law. But I don't remember whether the eligibility requirements are set by the legislature or set by the state agency that's administering it. So unfortunately, don't have a quick answer for that. Another question asking about, can you reliably tell if a dealer's price includes the rebate? It should not, unless they explicitly state that. So because dealers post their prices in different ways, I think the best thing is just to always ask and double check. But in general, they shouldn't include the rebate because the rebate, especially for a used vehicle, depends on your income. And so they can't guess on that for you. Are there any other questions?
I can jump in.
Go ahead.
I saw a question about whether it's possible to like buy or lease the tool to measure battery health. When I visited dealerships, I asked that question or a similar question, and because it's a really small tool that can fit in your pocket, I was told that it is a really expensive software that is used, that the dealerships have purchased and then now used to test the battery health. So I think it might be hard to, depending on your situation, to come by that on your own. But if you purchased or leased your vehicle locally, dealerships will often, are often very welcome to follow up with their vehicle drivers. That might be something you can reach out to them about. If there are local dealerships near you that are under the same manufacturer, oftentimes they're very willing to help. And in general, I think just reaching out to a dealership near you, they're often equipped to handle the battery health test. You might ask if they can handle that, if they can do that for you. And there may or may not be a cost associated, depending on how busy they are or whether you are in the same manufacturer or whether your vehicle might need some service as well.
I think we're good to call it a day. Again, you're welcome to email either of us, both of us, with any questions, but thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye-bye.